How do you fall in love with a place if you are not born there? Well, my guest today is Erika Benke, a Hungarian journalist who fell in love with the northern Finnish city of Oulu, which is not very far from the Arctic Circle. She's a multi-platform journalist who worked at the BBC London office for 23 years. She went on multiple trips to Finland while producing documentaries for the BBC from 2017 to 2020. She moved to Oulu in 2020 amid the coronavirus pandemic and also took voluntary redundancy from the BBC a year later. She's now a freelance journalist who contributes to the BBC and also works for the Oulu 2026 project. Among other subjects, she has reported on climate change, the Finnish basic income experiment, and Finnish happiness from Finland. Today, I will talk to her about her life as a journalist, her career at the BBC, and her Finnish experience. Erika, a very warm welcome to the program, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Yep,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Right. So let's travel back in time and talk about your childhood. So you are from Hungary.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know about your childhood in Hungary.
Well, it's not terribly interesting, to be honest with you, because I was born in Hungary, that's right, and my childhood was in the 70s. At that point, of course, Hungary was part of the Soviet bloc. And I wasn't even born in Budapest. I was in a small town in the north of the country called Salgótarján that nobody knows about, which is a big, not terribly big, but it's an industrial town. So it was full of factories. It was a bit gray and a bit drab, and not much was happening. There were obviously restrictions on people's lives in communist times, and but I had a very loving family. So I have very fond memories, especially of an aunt of mine who used to look after me because my parents were working an awful lot. But it was a kind of conventional sort of childhood in communist times in an industrial place, so not much. But one good thing happened to me when I was 6 years old. So I went to school, primary school in this small town, and it was kind of a miracle, but my school was selected to be part of an experiment to teach English, which was very unusual because everybody was learning Russian at that point. Russian was the foreign language, but my school was selected for this experiment, and we started learning English, and I really liked it. I obviously have a talent for languages, and I started speaking English. English is such an easy language to pick up, especially when you're very young. And like 2 years later, I was walking to a supermarket. Well, not a supermarket in a Western sense, but like a department store in my hometown. And I bumped into two Finnish ladies. They were there because my hometown had this sister town arrangement with Vantaa in Finland. So they were part of this official delegation visiting the sister town in Hungary. And they were trying to buy some postcards and stamps, and they were trying to speak English, but nobody, of course, understood them. But there I was, this little, 8-year-old, and I helped them buy their postcards and stamps. And they were so happy that there was this little girl speaking English. And they said, oh, let's go and have a coffee, because, of course, they were on this official trip, and I was the only sort of normal, ordinary member of the public they could speak to. And I was just fascinated by that. I thought, oh, wow, if speaking English, helps you have these fantastic experiences, adventures almost, then it must be a really good thing. So it inspired me to learn English. And about 30 years later, I met this, by then, of course, she was an old lady in Vantaa, and we got reunited, which is a really special moment for both of us.
Oh my God. So it sounds like a very beautiful coincidence. You meet someone, a foreign lady in your home country, and then after 30 years, you meet that person in that person's homeland. So, wow.
Yeah.
It just sounds so beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing.
And so, I keep telling her that this is all because of her. It was such tremendous sort of inspiration a moment of inspiration for me, realizing that, speaking English can, give you these experiences. And it was
exactly.
certainly something to start me off on a journey to learn English and to become a journalist in the end.
Yeah, I understand. So how many languages do you speak?
Oh my God. So I'm a native Hungarian speaker, but basically I'm bilingual with English.
Mm-hmm.
I lived most of my life in London. And I also speak Russian because, as I say, when I was a child in Hungary, that was the language to learn, and at school. And English for me was an extra at school. I also speak Polish, but not very well now.
Okay.
And speak a little German. Oh, and of course Finnish.
Sinä puhut suomea.
Ja minä puhun suomea vähän ja huonosti, mutta puhun. Okay, maybe we should go back to English for your listeners.
Exactly, because it also went over my head because I forgot most of the Finnish language skills that I acquired when I was in Finland. But anyway, so in Finnish language, Hungary is called unkari. I was just checking the Google.
Unkari, yeah.
So when you were introducing yourself to a Finnish person in Finland, maybe you say, "Hi, minä olen
unkarilainen."
Yeah, Erika, and minä olen unkarilainen.
Yeah. But you see, because I lived such a long time in London, I usually say that, I usually explain that I moved here from London, where I lived 24 years or 25 years, but originally, I was born in Hungary.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay, so when did you first realize that you were interested in journalism and storytelling?
So I learned, so I was studying languages at university. So I was studying English and Russian at Budapest University. But when I finished university, that was the time when the Berlin Wall had fallen. So there was this big moment of excitement and euphoria. And the media was opening up, and I just bumped into a Scottish man who moved to Prague in the Czech Republic to start a newspaper, the Financial Times for the region. So it was printed on pink paper. It was a business weekly paper for Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Poland. And he needed somebody in Budapest to set up the bureau and start, filing copy about Hungarian business stories. So that's how it started. I started working for him, and I really loved it much more than translating or interpreting, because that's what I thought I would be. I thought I would be a simultaneous translator, conference translator, but I realized that journalism was a lot more exciting. So he got me into journalism, this Scottish man called Ian. And
that was your first journalism job.
Yeah. But then a few months after I started working for Ian, I saw an advert in the Hungarian papers. The BBC was advertising for a Hungarian native speaker journalist to move to London and work for the BBC World Service radio, which at that point still had a Hungarian service. It was closed down a few years later, but at that point it was still running. And so I got that job and moved to London.
Okay, and how difficult was the recruitment? Do you remember anything from that time?
Well, it really wasn't, because, I had been working for this English language newspaper. So my work language was English. And so it was just a really kind of, we were talking about the news of the day, as it were, on the day of the interview. So we were just discussing what angles I would cover on, say, it was just a few months after Princess Diana died. So we were talking about what would be the best angles at this point for a Hungarian audience, because our audience was Hungarian. So I was doing journalism in Hungarian in London, so
Oh my God.
broadcasting in Hungarian, but not for very long because, see, I always wanted to go to the English newsroom. And luckily, it was quite easy to make the transition from the Hungarian language service to the main newsroom of the BBC World Service,
Yeah.
which I totally loved. That's just, working in the newsroom, you just feel like you're at the nerve center of the organization. And the other good thing about the BBC is that, so originally I was a radio journalist, but of course the BBC does so much more: television and the internet. We have the big news website, social media, and it's really quite easy to work. So we call them attachments. So you can apply for an attachment in TV or social media or the website. And I was quite curious, so I just kept applying, and many people love their little comfort zones, if you see what I mean. They know what they're doing and they're happy to stay there forever. But I wanted to try each of these. So I had spent like 6 months on TV, domestic TV, not international world, but the domestic news programs. And then like another 6 months on social media, another year on online. And that's just so good because you just have all these different, you pick up all these skills, and the BBC is very good at it's good for management as well. If they have journalists who are multi-skilled, then they can move them around on the rota and fill the gaps here and there. So they're very supportive of people like me who want to try their hands at different platforms.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I understand, because, I never thought that I could be a video journalist, and that's what I'm doing actually right now. But yeah, I started just this year, but for the last 9 years, I have been actually writing, because I always had this camera fear and also shyness, because I was so shy about speaking in front of the camera. And also because, I don't know if it happens to you, now I am speaking a second language with you, and when I am speaking a second language in front of camera, most of the time my mind goes blank. I just don't know what to say. Because this camera fear, I think you are very familiar with this, because you have worked in front of the camera. And I have never worked in front of the camera in my life. I always worked in newspapers in Bangladesh, so it was very difficult for me, and I couldn't get the courage to sit in front of the camera. And
it is scary.
It's very scary. And also because it's live, because if you write something and you make some errors or mistakes, you can edit it. You correct it. But as we are live now and it's being recorded, so if I say something wrong, oh my God, it's gonna stay there. There's no way. There's no way I can actually. It is very scary. But as you are saying that, if someone has multiple skills, it's actually also better for the organization if they can spot that employee,
of course,
and utilize his or her skills across different platforms. So that's why I just at the beginning of this year, I just thought, hey, maybe all the people now, they want to watch content instead of read articles, and the YouTube is growing, it's exploding with different types of content, and especially there are many content in English language now on YouTube. So I thought, as I'm so passionate about Finland, and I call myself a Finnophile writer, so I should actually start making content about Finland in English and post them on YouTube. And that's what I'm doing now. And also I want to tell you something else, because I started learning English after my higher secondary school. So at the time I started learning English like my life depended on it. I was so obsessed with this language, and my dream was to go to England and talk to British people, because I was always interested in talking to British people and telling them, hey, good morning, my name is Mahmud and I'm from Bangladesh, and nice to meet you. Can I talk to you for a moment? So I had this imagination in my mind. And I was learning English actually by listening to the BBC World Service, BBC World Radio. And I still remember that in front of the mirror, I was standing in front of the mirror, and I was trying to copy the newscasters, like,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I was doing things like, welcome to the BBC World Service. This is Mahmudul Islam. These are the latest headlines in the UK and around the world. So, I still remember
Wow.
those.
When I next go to London, I always go back to the BBC to visit the newsroom now. But when I next go back, I'll tell my colleagues, the newsreaders, that they have a fan in Bangladesh who
You should.
does that. They will love it.
I specifically remember one newscaster. Her name was D. Sebastian. I don't know.
Dee, she's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Really? Oh my
She's lovely.
God.
Yeah.
D. Sebastian.
Did you like Dee's voice? She has a really nice, very warm and friendly.
Yeah, very warm and friendly. Yeah.
Very engaging.
I actually remember her name and her voice. That from that time, it was around 2007, 2008. Around that time, I was listening to the BBC and trying to learn English and trying to copy the newscasters and how they, introduce themselves and start reading the news. And
when you put this on YouTube, I'll send a link to the Sebastian.
You should. And then I kind of, became very fascinated with the accent and the style of this Stephen Saka, the BBC Hard Talk presenter. I mean, he's so good. I really, really love his accent. Oh my God. And the way he talks, the way he presents. I have big fascinations for him. But anyway, so let's talk about the time that you got the BBC job and then you moved to England. So I want to know, was life in Britain very different from that in Hungary? And did you experience a culture shock?
Not really. I mean, not really, because, I had been to London quite a few times before I got the job. So I knew London quite a bit. And but the interesting thing was that we moved there with a baby. So I had a 1-year-old daughter when we moved to London. So that was quite exciting, to move with such a young child and, build up all the networks that you need, for my husband is also a journalist. So he also got a job with the BBC Hungarian service. So, you need to sort childcare and kindergarten and, register with the doctor. So that was all new and exciting. But London itself, like, the food and the people and the geography was not new at all. So it was quite and the other excitement was, of course, working with the BBC. So that was new, and we both really loved.
I understand. And in terms of how people interact with each other and the level of socialization in a country, so is Hungary very different from the UK? Because Finns, they are not very social people. But I don't know much about the Hungarian people, and I think British people are quite friendly, right?
Yeah, they are. They do a lot of small talk, in the street, and neighbors talk to each other. Whereas in Finland, I just moved to a new house about 4 months ago. I haven't spoken to any of the neighbors yet.
Oh yeah, Finns don't even know who their neighbors are. They don't talk to neighbors.
No, and I don't see them.
Yeah, I know all these Finnish quirks. And Finnish people, I mean, when I tell them, hey, you know what? In Bangladesh, we even go to our neighbor's house. We talk to them. And we are kind of like a family. If someone is living next door, our neighbor, we're kind of like family. We talk to them like multiple times a day. Yeah. We go to their house and they come to our place. So it's very natural. And if you tell this to Finns, they're quite surprised. Oh my God, you talk to your neighbors. Wow.
Yeah.
Because they don't.
Well, in England, in London, we did talk to our neighbors. And of course, when your child gets to school or kindergarten, nursery, immediately there's a group of parents that you become friends with, meeting at the school gates every day, kind of creates your social network quite easily. So
Yeah.
it was, yeah, very similar to Hungary in that sense.
I understand. Now, tell me something about the working life in the BBC London newsroom. It's a huge organization and it employs hundreds of journalists. So I want to know if you
Yeah.
have any interesting experience that you want to share.
Well, it's so I always worked shifts. So there's a lot of shift working. So you often get to work nights. So night shifts are always fun because well, I always hated them because I'm kind of a day person, so I can't sleep during the day. So I was always really exhausted. But on the other hand, because there's less work to do overnight, there's a lot more socializing and there's a lot of, friendships being born in the middle of the night when you have a bit more time to chat. So yeah, so a lot of shift work. And then, so what I told you just now, that this fantastic opportunity of moving around and learning picking up other skills, and which actually I think this lifelong learning, I still continue to learn. Like, for instance, when I was at the BBC, I would always have a cameraman when I was making films. But now I'm shooting my films myself because that's just the way the world's going. They want video journalists to do everything, do the shooting, do the interviews, do the production, and do the editing as well. And that somehow, that I find it really just normal, and you just get on with it. If there's pressure on you to do everything yourself, of course it would be so much nicer to have my cameraman, but if I have to do it, I just pick up the skills myself. And that was kind of started at the BBC. So I just learned somehow to cope with everything, especially when you're out and about in the field, reporting from, I was out doing the migration crisis in Europe in 2015 quite a lot, in Germany and Hungary, Slovenia. And that's when you learn so much, when you're alone and you have to be on air and you just have to sort everything. You just have to find a solution. You have to be so creative sometimes. So that I think, so the BBC is a fantastic place to work. There's always somebody who can give you really good advice if you're in trouble. Like if some news breaks at the end of the world, like a small island in the Pacific Ocean, there would be somebody in the newsroom who either has been there or speaks the language. That's what I love about the BBC, that 99% of the people are so good, so professional, so fantastically knowledgeable. And you can always, whatever the news is, you can always find somebody in that newsroom. The newsroom is, by the way, really big. It's in the center of London near Oxford Circus. And it's like, imagine like 11 football fields put together. That's the newsroom. God. It's massively big. And it's very, very logically set up. So like people who kind of need to talk to each other from different teams are sitting quite close to each other. For instance, you probably know BBC World, the television. So they have like little news bulletins at the top of the hour and at 5:30. So the people who produce those bulletins, who put together the pictures and the text, sit next to the BBC, the domestic news stations equivalent people, so who put together the news bulletins for the domestic, so a UK-facing news program. So like one of them, so sometimes, oftentimes they do the same news, or very similar. They the phrasing might be different. The words might be focused on domestic audiences, and the other one will, but they use the same pictures. So there's a lot of there's a big effort to minimize overlap. So if somebody else in the newsroom has already cut those 15 seconds that you need to visualize your news, then he's sitting next to you. So that's great. Well, what other stories could I tell you about the newsroom? Well, I don't want to get any of my former colleagues in trouble. There's a lot of
Okay.
there's a lot of fun.
No trouble. So
Unfortunately, we have some mice in the newsroom.
Oh,
Which
God.
always, in the middle of the night, we see a furry creature lurking in the corner.
Yeah,
That
I
sometimes
understand.
scares people out a bit.
I understand. Okay, so let's talk about the Finnish basic income experiment that you covered. So how did it catch your attention, and how did you plan and work on the story?
At the time when it started, it was January 2017, and I was actually doing an attachment, one of my attachments with the BBC, with a domestic-facing news program, and I saw the story and I really liked it. I thought it was really interesting, and I pitched the story to them, and my pitch was that Glasgow was commissioning a feasibility study about basic income. And I said, look, if the Glasgow local government is considering it, maybe they could learn something from the Finns who are already doing it. And they liked it, and said, oh, go ahead and try to find some people in Finland who are on the experiment. So there were 2,000 unemployed Finns who were selected for this. So I went ahead and found 4 people all over Finland who were receiving basic income. And I loved it because the characters were really different. They were all over the place. They were different ages, very, very different life stories, and I was quite fascinated by it. So I was very disappointed when the Victoria Derbyshire program said, no, it's very nice, but it's not for us. So I thought, God, I've already set it up, basically. I must find somebody in the BBC. So that's when my background comes in, that I had been to so many places within the BBC newsroom. So I started going around like a saleswoman, like, hey, I've got these 4 characters in Finland. So eventually, after pitching it to 7 different parts of the BBC, the BBC Russian service decided to fund my first trip. So I got a reporter from Moscow who came over to Helsinki, and I met him and his cameraman in Helsinki. And we went all around Finland, interviewed these 4 characters, and we made a story. So it was a bilingual project. So we made a Russian version and an English version. And that was a really nice film. And when we had that, 6 months later, I suggested that we go back and look at these people again, if basic income is making any difference to their lives. And that was, quite easy to get commissioned for. BBC has a documentary program called BBC World. Oh, sorry, what was it? Not BBC. It's on World and the News Channel. It's our main documentary series, 25 minutes. Our World, that's what it's called. So Our World decided to fund my return trip to Finland to revisit these people. And then BBC Russian was no longer involved in that. So I produced a big 25-minute documentary. It was an observational documentary, so it was just real people talking about their lives. There was no reporter in it, which is, I think, it's just so much stronger. I think it's when you just have, sometimes a reporter just gets in the way, when you just have that characters. So yeah, it was at the end of the first year of the experiment. And then because it was a 2-year experiment, they decided to send me back at the end of the second year as well to kind of complete the story. So what happened to these 4 characters in Finland by the end of this 2-year social experiment? Have they now got a job? Have they got money? Are they happy? So it's very exciting. But what happened was I kept coming back to Finland to make the basic income interviews. And, you know, when you go back to the same places, you just, especially one of my characters was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Finland, in a forest, in a very remote area. So when the BBC turns up there, that's quite a story locally. So the second time I went back, the local mayor wanted to meet me, and I met the local mayor for lunch. And she's a lovely lady who had lots of story ideas, you know, different story ideas from Basic Income. So I went back to the newsroom in London and said, hey, you know, can I go back to Finland? Because there's this lovely other story about, like, you know, this gym in Kurikka, which nobody obviously heard about, but 65-year-old people over the age of 65 can go free. And the local government is paying for the gym passes. And the health of elderly people in that place is just so much better now. They don't fall because their legs are stronger. Even their chronic diseases like diabetes, they need fewer painkillers for other conditions. And so just have regular physical exercise can help so much. And these little social experiments, they do really well on social media. So I caught a little video about this gym and all the elderly people, you know, telling me how wonderful it is and how much healthier they are. So I had lots of other ideas because of the Basic Income films, and I kept coming back to Finland, and I realized how much happier I was in Finland than in London, because, you know, London is a huge city with 9 million people. Finland, you have
the whole
space.
country is 5.5. The whole country.
And when I went to work in London, I had to use the underground, and it's just always rush hour these days. You know, there's always the crowds, and that was, of course, before Corona. But, you know, like, I was always traveling under somebody's armpit, you know, because I'm so small. And then you go to Finland, and all of a sudden you have all the space you need and all the beautiful nature and the air. And so I realized, hang on. And because I always wanted to, the BBC has this wonderful thing called career break. So you can go away for a year and they keep your job. And you go away, do something else.
Is it something like sabbatical?
Yeah. In some other countries, the BBC calls it a career break. So I always wanted to take a career break. And I thought, if I take a career break, it has to be Finland. And then things just fell into place because I was shooting a film near Oulu in the north of Finland in November 2019. And somebody I was working with said, hey, did you know that Oulu is applying to become European Union culture capital in 2026. And they would really need somebody like you to help with the bid. So I spoke to the Oulu 26 team. And I came to Oulu a few months later to work with them on the bid. So my job was just to find stories in the Oulu area that would support their bid to become European culture capital.
Yeah.
So I made lots of videos and we won. I'm not saying we won because it's teamwork as always, but my videos did really well. Oulu 26, say the Facebook page had like 2,000 followers and my videos had 80,000 views, which is massive.
So as you're saying that you took a career break and you moved to Finland. So why did you do that? Was it because you had traveled to Finland before multiple times?
Yeah.
So you wanted to explore Finland and Finnish stories further. Was it because of this reason that you wanted?
Yeah. So as I say, I had been living in London for such a long time. You know, if you live in London for more than 20 years, and I don't know, I feel like it sounds awful, but I feel like I ticked London. So I feel like I've done what I wanted to do and I was ready to move on. when you reach, your 40s, sort of mid 40s and late 40s, and you feel like, also, there was a time at the BBC when I was really happy. I was feeling very creative. I was making lots of films, but I felt like I was kind of stuck at the same levels. I couldn't get a promotion. I felt like my career was not going anywhere. And at the same time, I had been coming to Finland on my trips to make films, and I noticed how much happier I was in Finland. And I thought, yeah, let's give it a try. Let's see, if I move here, how will I feel? Will I just, if I get to know living here permanently is very different from coming to visit. Will I feel equally happy living here? So I wanted to give it a try. And yes, the answer is yes. I feel just as happy. And I love winter. Winter kind of disappeared from the rest of Europe. When I was a child in Hungary, we used to have big snowy winters. Not anymore. Climate change has put an end to all that. So the only place in Europe where we have winter is the Nordic, Scandinavian countries, the very north of Europe. And I love skiing. I love being outside. I love snow and ice. And it's just amazing. Here in Oulu, I open the door, and within a moment, I'm in a forest or at the seaside. It's not like that in London. You kind of need to travel to get to a park. And even in the park, there's millions of people. Here you're not, you're alone, or just you see a few people. But I just love it. I love the feeling. I feel so free. And it's so easy to exercise. I feel a lot fitter and healthier here than I was in London. So it's done a lot of good for me, physically, as well as, mental health. You don't have to take the underground every day and waste, an hour of your life sweating in a confined space. It's just so good.
Yeah, I understand. And life is very relaxed, I guess, in Finland, right? So you always have access to nature. You always have access to forests, no matter where you live in the country, whether you are living in the northern part or in the southern part. You always have access to nature. That's one of the most beautiful things about living in Finland.
Yeah, exactly.
And I really miss Finnish nature and Finnish forests so much.
I can imagine. Yeah.
It's kind of very addictive. I mean, if you are not a forest person and you move to Finland and you start exploring the forest, going to the forest and start spending time there, I think there is no going back. You will become addicted to the Finnish nature.
Yeah, you become a forest person. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And Finns have this, relationship. Finns have this connection with nature, like whether they are children, whether they are middle-aged, teenager, young people, or even the elderly people.
Yeah.
I have seen people of all ages going to the forest, and the Nordic walking with those support with the support system, with those sticks, and also the teenagers and also the children. So I have seen people of all ages.
Absolutely, yeah.
Going to the forest.
I think it's wonderful that they enjoy the same activities. Different generations. They all seem to really like going to the forest, picking berries and mushrooms, and skiing in the winter. I mean, people in their 70s or even 80s, they just go skiing in the forest, cross-country skiing. And it's really nice, because it's not like that in London or Budapest, or I'm not sure how it is in Dhaka, but would, 10-year-old be equally excited about going fishing as their grandfather? I don't know. Here they are, and it just creates, this happiness that we briefly talked about. And I'm sure that's part of it, that people seem to really enjoy similar activities in different ages.
Yeah, exactly. And we have talked about what you like about Finland. So Is there anything that you don't like about this country?
Yeah, there is. I was thinking about this question. And I did come up with something. So look, the only thing I don't like really is that I'm desperately trying to learn Finnish. I want to get to a level of fluency where, I want to be fluent in Finnish. And I do speak some Finnish. Actually, the last month or so, it's actually become a lot more fluent. Something clicked in my head, which, I'm very happy about. But when I speak Finnish to somebody, like in a shop or, in like a medical appointment, something, to a stranger, not a friend of mine, it happens all the time that after the second or third sentence, they switch to English. They don't let me practice their Finnish. They're just very pragmatic. They want the conversation to flow and they want to speed things up rather than wait for me to, struggle through my little sentence. But that's just so bad because that's not, there's a big problem. A lot of foreigners, a lot of immigrants to Finland, they say that lack of Finnish language is a huge issue when you try to find a job. But Finnish people are not helping you to learn Finnish because they just hear that you're not Finnish and immediately they switch to English. And of course, their English is so much better than my Finnish or the average, foreigners' Finnish. So I can see the point, but they should be a bit more, forgiving and a bit more cooperative. and also they crush your confidence because you're trying to speak Finnish and it must be so bad that they
Yeah, I understand. And I want to tell you two things about this. The first thing is that, you are European, so you have white skin. So if you are in Finland, someone cannot just instantly conclude that you are a foreigner because they don't know. You have white skin. And still, as you were saying, still it's quite difficult for you to continue a conversation in Finnish because when you are talking to a real Finn, a native Finn, after 2 or 3 sentences, they just understand, you are not Finnish. So they switch. So just think about people who are like me. We have brown skin, so we are people of color, and also the black people. So it's very difficult because appearance, it's all about appearance, If I am approaching a Finn, he or she instantly knows I'm not a Finn. So they will always switch to English. But as you said, you have white skin, but still it's a problem for you. And the second thing that I want to tell you is that as I was reading about Finnish language, I read that it comes from the Uralic language and it has very close similarities with Hungarian and Estonian. Is it?
That's what they say. Well, the truth is that the ancestors of Finns and the ancestors of Hungarians, they separated. They used to, live together, like in the, in the territory of today's Siberia.
Oh.
Many, 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 many years ago. Like, I don't know how many thousands, but they separated such a long time ago that today's Hungarian and today's Finnish are as far apart as English and Pashto. Or English and Persian. Like, there's nothing. It's not helping you at all if you're a Hungarian speaker. So if you speak Hungarian and you speak Finnish, we would not understand a word.
Oh my God.
So they are not that close.
So the information I can say now, the information that Finnish and Hungarian have similarities, actually it's not that accurate.
Well,
in the present context.
In today's languages, it's not helping you. There are some grammatical kind of similarities. For instance, how Finnish people put suffixes at the end of, like when you say "in my hand," it's what is it? In my hand, kate,
or something like that.
Kasasani.
Ah,
So
Kasasani, yeah, Kasasani.
so like in Hungarian, it's the location kind of thing, little suffix, and the
Object.
who's the possessive thing that it's my. So we put all that at the end of the word as well in Hungarian. So there are kind of similar, instead of like the English, like in comes, my comes before hand, and Finnish and Hungarian put all those things at the end of the word, like attach these. So there are some grammatical similarities, but the only thing that helps me being a Hungarian native speaker is pronunciation. So if you give me a Finnish text, I can read it and people wouldn't suspect that I'm not Finnish. So that's the confusing thing for them, that I start speaking Finnish and it sounds like Finnish, but then, I get into trouble because I don't know a word. Like, oh, wait a minute. And then I start thinking. And then they realize, aha, she's not Finnish. So let's do it in English then. And that's the end of the Finnish conversation.
Yeah. You remind me of my conversations with Finns, and I tried, but it didn't work. And I thought, okay, let's continue in English. And if I have to speak Finnish, maybe I have to talk to myself only in front of the mirror, because there is no one else. But anyway, I think if you try and if you keep trying, if you just
I will get there. Yeah, I will get there. I mean, the problem is that my work language is English, so I make all my videos, all my journalistic content in English, and many of my colleagues don't even understand. They don't get it. They don't. Why do you need to learn Finnish? So that's one thing. And of course, as you said, I moved here in the middle of the corona epidemic, corona pandemic. So people were even less social than they would have been otherwise. So everybody was working from home, until now, really. It's just only totally recently, a few weeks ago, that people have started to go back to offices.
Yeah.
So before I moved here, I thought, I'll be working in an office where, people are the same people, they're repeating the same phrases among themselves in Finnish. That's the best way of picking up a language, just repetition you hear. But of course, it didn't happen because of Corona. So
people became less social because everybody was mostly working from home, and there were not many opportunities to meet people. Yeah, I understand.
And there was a time when restaurants and bars were closed or had very, very limited opening times, and people were everybody has elderly parents or grandparents, and they don't want to catch it and give it to them. So they were even less likely to go for coffees and, to come to each other's houses for dinners. And so normal social interaction was restricted. So which, of course, it's not good when you're trying to learn a language.
Oh, yeah. I know. So now let's talk about stereotypes about Finns. There are so many. I cannot just mention all of them, such as they're shy, they're introvert. It is very difficult to be friends with them. So I want to know your experience of interacting with Finnish people.
I don't know how you are. I think it's a myth. It's like an urban myth that they are, I think maybe it's only because I'm a journalist and I'm very curious and I love talking to people, but I never had a problem, making friends with Finnish people, or just, if not friends, but just to have a conversation. So if I wanted to have a conversation with somebody, that usually happens quite easily. I think it's stereotype, but it's true. But I just told you that I moved to a new house 4 months ago and I don't know my neighbors. So there must be an element of truth in it. But I think on the whole, especially young people who speak English, which is basically everybody except the very old people, they're very, they're just, easy to strike up a conversation with.
Yeah, I understand. And I still remember I wrote a blog I think 3 or 4 years ago, and I wrote that get to know Finns well because they have stories to tell. And I was writing that if you want to get to know Finns, then I think it's easy if it is through some common interests. Let's say if you are into sports and if you find someone who is also into sports, then it is very easy to strike up a conversation with them and, create a bond maybe and strengthen the bond over time. But, I mean, if you just, it's not like London where you can talk to people about the weather. It doesn't, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, you can talk to people about the sauna.
Yeah, exactly. You can talk to people about sauna and they'll be really happy, and also ice hockey and these kind of things. They will be really happy. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, and also it depends. Like, as a Hungarian, I'm pretty sure you don't get along with all the Hungarians in your country. I mean, it's impossible, right? So it's the same for me.
Well, that's the reason why I live abroad.
Yeah, it's the same for me, I mean, in Bangladesh, we have so many people, but of course I don't get along. I cannot be friends with everyone, even if we are of the same age, right? Because it doesn't happen. And also, there are so many elements when it comes to friendship. There is time, there is space, there is location. I mean, something has to click between the two people.
Yeah, exactly. So I never felt like in Hungary, I don't know. I always had a feeling that I was dropped off in the wrong place when I was born.
Oh my God.
I never felt like completely home. Of course, my parents and my family were there, whom I loved, so I have my roots there, definitely. But culturally, sort of intellectually, I just don't belong to Hungary in a way that I belong to Finland.
I understand.
I have a much bigger bond with this country than with my birth country.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And I perfectly relate to your feeling because, this is also something that has happened to me. And I feel very strongly about it. Like I always say, I'm a Bangladeshi by birth and also by my passport. But in terms of culture, I think I'm very Finnish. And it comes very naturally from inside. I mean, I don't impose the Finnish identity on me. I don't force myself to accept the Finnish identity or Finnish things. It just happens so naturally. And because I have lived in Finland, so I have practically experienced the culture. I have talked to people and I have, moved around different places. So the feeling that I got when I talked to Finns and, explored different places, I got this feeling that, hey, I think I belong to this place more than I belong to the place where I was born. So you cannot actually force this. I have friends from Bangladesh living in Finland who have already got the Finnish passport. And not many of them still feel Finnish. They still feel Bangladeshi, because this identity, it's so subtle. And it's so, I mean, I don't know how to say it or how to explain it because it's all about feeling. You have to feel it. It happens there and it happens here. I cannot force you to be Finnish. So I can perfectly relate to you when you say that you feel like you're born in Hungary, but that was not the place for you. So that's why you are living.
There must have been a mix-up. I was delivered the wrong address.
but anyway, now you have the experience of three distinct cultures: Hungarian, British, and Finnish. But I only have two: Bangladeshi culture and Finnish culture, and that's why I really want to go back to Finland. And I always tell my friends and people who are close to me, I always tell them, hey, in terms of language, I feel like I'm British because I feel like English is my mother tongue. I can express myself English in a way that I cannot express myself speaking in my, native tongue.
How interesting. Is it Bengali?
Yeah, it's Bengali. It's Bengali. So it's totally different. It has almost nothing. I think I'm not a language expert, but we even have a different alphabet. So we don't even have A, B, C, D. So it's completely different. So
I had Bengali, BBC World Service has a Bengali
Bengali,
service.
yeah. They also had the
I,
Bengali service. Yeah, I
I
know. They
have
also had the Bengali
friends
service.
and colleagues in the newsroom.
Okay. So you see, I always tell my friends that in terms of language, I feel like I'm British because I want to express
Mm.
myself in English, and I feel very comfortable, and I think I can express my authentic self in English. But in terms of culture, personal space, social policies, I think I'm a Finn because I really love this. And I don't know how else to explain it, but it's all about heart, it's all about mind, it's all about feeling. But anyway,
Yeah. Sometimes you don't even have to explain it because there's just no good words, and trying to somehow formulate words, it's just there's no point really. It would just take away some of the
beauty.
intensity of it if you try
Intensity, yeah,
to.
exactly. So you have reported on the high happiness rankings of Finland on
Yeah.
BBC radio, and I actually listened to that
Did
report.
you? Did you like
Yeah.
it?
Oh, yeah. So I want to talk to
Thank
you
you.
about this Finnish happiness because I have been writing about Finnish happiness for like 3 years now. My writings on Finnish happiness have been published in Bangladesh, in India, and I have interviewed a Finnish academic from Aalto University in Espoo about this Finnish. I mean, he is a Finnish happiness expert, Dr. Frank Maatala. So I have sent my writings to him like 2 years ago, and he really liked it, and he is always inspiring me to write more and more about Finland. And you can say that's also one of the reasons I became a Finnophile writer, because I thought, okay, maybe I'm doing well because these people are praising my writing. But anyway, so I want to talk to you about this high happiness rankings of Finland now. So what do you think about this? Why are Finns so happy? What's your personal experience?
So I think happiness is probably not a good word. So the way the United Nations compiles this happiness index or happiness report, they have their own criteria, and Finland scores really well, very high points on most of these criteria, like GDP, for instance, press freedom, stuff like that. So it's not really happiness, it's quality of life that they measure. And so Finnish people are not dancing in the street. If that's how you measure, that's what most, like, Brazilians or Argentinians would be the happiest if you kind of look at the outward, like, expression. So it's just such a good place to live, here, because first of all, you're not alone. If something happens to you, there's this net. This is a welfare state. So if you fall ill, if you get unemployed, the state is there for you and provides you support. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I really love about here, which I think is part of happiness, is the gap between rich and poor is not that big. And everybody is equal. So everybody is treated with respect. And that's just so good. It's just so good. And I can't see the same thing in London or in Budapest. Taxes are very high, but they spend them well. I don't mind paying very high taxes if I see that, for instance, here in Oulu, if you're in a wheelchair because of some horrible disease that struck you without, you just got really unlucky. For instance, you can still go fishing here, if that's your thing, because they built ramps, like these platforms along the river, but you can just go with a wheelchair. And how amazing is that the society just looks after everybody. And I think equality is the real reason for happiness here, that it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or handicapped, you're part of society, and people, I think there's a general understanding that the welfare or well-being of society as a whole is more important than individual wealth. And that's that's something really good. It's good to live in a society like that. And then on top of that, and equality. So me being a foreign woman is not an obstacle to anything. And of course, I'm white, but I've spoken to people here at Oulu University. We have lots of ladies from Latin America or India, and they say the same thing. Being a foreign woman in Finland is not an obstacle to achieving any of your dreams. You can dream, you can set your goals, and you can, if you work hard, you can achieve it. And it's not like that everywhere.
Exactly.
And then on top of that, you have nature, this wonderful nature that does wonders to everybody's mental health. There are studies that say that just 10 minutes every day being out in a forest lowers your blood pressure and has these amazing, physical benefits. So I think basically equality is the key thing, which is real here. They don't just talk about it. It actually is real. Now I have to go and connect my laptop.
No trouble. You can.
The charger. Otherwise it's gonna go down.
No trouble.
Okay, I'm back with you.
No trouble. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And in your report on the BBC radio, you just said this. It's about quality of life. So it's not exactly about happiness. And everything you said, I completely agree with you, because
Thank you.
the United Nations report, the World Happiness Report, it's based on 6 factors like GDP per capita, life expectancy, corruption, generosity, freedom in life. So they measure happiness according to these 6 criteria. And Finland and the other Nordic countries, they perform really well across all these 6, indicators or pillars. And that's why these countries are consistently ranked among the happiest nations in the world. But because I have lived in Finland, and I always say it, I was born in a country that is highly unequal. And then I lived in a country which is highly equal. And I know equality, you don't see it, but you feel it. And it affects your life in such a profound way, because everyone is treated with respect and there is no obstacle. And I always give the example of the Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin. If you think about her family background, she comes from a very modest and, poor family. And now she has, because of the welfare research, she got education, free education. The healthcare was free or almost affordable, very affordable. So the society has all the elements, and they are giving it to all the citizens who want to build their lives, who want to, improve their lives in any way they want. So you don't get these services in many countries. In many different countries, yes. That's why actually Finns are very happy. So there is no doubt about it. And I really liked what you wrote on your LinkedIn profile. You wrote, Finns are quietly changing the world, but they are not telling anyone about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's true that they are a bit shy. So, I mean, boasting and in general is kind of frowned upon here. So you're not going around, telling everybody, hey, I've done this and that. Yeah, like these things that I made my stories about, like this gym in the middle of nowhere, where anybody over the age of 65 can go free of charge, and as a result, the health of elderly people has improved significantly. What a wonderful thing! That's what everybody should be doing, because the local mayor just said, "Look, I pay for the care home. So if one of these people needs home care or needs to go to an elderly people's home, the local authority pays for that. It's so much cheaper for me if they are healthy, and that it's just so simple. And if you can, this gym membership costs her 70 euros, where a care home would cost €30,000 a year.
Oh my God.
So the gym for a year would be 700, and the care home 30,000. So her reasoning is quite simple. If people are happy and healthy, and they don't need the services of a care home, that saves a lot of money for the local government.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just so simple. So, and everywhere you go, you see examples like that. Just basic pragmatic thinking and good solutions that the world could learn from.
Yeah, exactly. And now I have 5 minutes left, and I have the last question for you. So that is, what is the best way to pitch a story to an editor and get it accepted?
Well, I wish I could tell you something like amazing, like a big secret, but I haven't got one. So, well, in Oulu, I don't need to pitch. So I just, they kind of, they're very flexible. So basically, everything I want to do, I can do here without having to persuade anyone. I just tell them what I'm doing, and I'll go out and film it. But with the BBC, of course, it was a lot more difficult to get. So, well, there are always buzzwords, if you see what I mean. At one point at the BBC, the buzzword was underserved audiences. So if you could prove that your story will be especially good for our underserved audiences, that was a winner. But so it's always worth reading those management emails that kind of spell out their strategy or priority for a certain period of time, and then just go with the flow. But no, I think, joking aside, I think if a story is good, if you can prove that your story will impact the lives of a large number of people. Well, at least for the BBC, when I had a global audience, that's always a winner. Just somehow to show how, the Finnish basic income experiment, everybody can learn from it. Because basic income is such a buzzword, especially during the Corona. Remember when Corona started, everybody was saying, "Oh, if we had something like that in place, how much easier it would be for everybody." So, so that was quite easy, because it was something that was hotly debated by economists. Some said it would be the end of the world if we introduced basic income. Others were saying it would save us from economic disaster if something like coronavirus hits. So I think my strategy is just to have. So I always prefer real people talking about their lives, and just have real people, faces who can explain a complicated economic term like basic income or climate change. I found this little place near Oulu called E. It's a small place north of Oulu, which managed to cut down on their carbon emissions by 80%, 30 years ahead of the EU target. So that's quite fantastic. So how did they do it? Everybody can learn from that. So when I first made a little video about E, just for social media, 2 minutes, for the BBC, we received comments and emails from all over the world. Everybody wanted to learn from E, from Santiago in Chile to Libya. And that was just so amazing. And then I came back to E and made a longer documentary about how exactly they managed to do that. And that was 2 years ago. So it was November 2019. And in E, they still keep receiving emails and messages from all over the world. And when you hear stories like that, that's so rewarding. So that's why it's so good to be a journalist, because you just it gives you the feeling that, you know, you achieved something and you influenced people's lives in a good way.
Yeah.
And when you make your next pitch, you know, if you can refer back to your, you know, I did this story about E, and, you know, they still keep messages about.
Yeah.
And the same, I did a story about cycling in Oulu in the winter, you know, for Oulu. Because here, it doesn't matter how much snow we have, people keep cycling because maintenance is so good. So the bike paths are properly cleaned up after, you know, the snow falls. And, you know, we have the same snowy conditions in Canada and parts of the United States, but they don't cycle there. And so I had the same thing. We had so many inquiries from people like in Toronto and stuff, asking, how do they do that in Oulu? Why are we not cycling? Because here, you know, children cycle to school in the winter, as a matter of fact, because, you know, what else? You know, they don't take children to school by car here.
Yeah.
But that's also, of course, clever planning, because the cycle path is a shortcut. Whereas if you wanted to drive your child to school, you would need to go around half of the neighborhood.
I understand. Yeah. Okay. So my time is over. So it was great talking to you, and have a nice time. Maybe we'll talk later some other times.
Thank you very much for having me, and come to Finland, and let's meet up again soon.
Let's meet. So
let's
maybe
stay in touch.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe you will have something to work together on. So, you know, these things.
Why not? No, I'd love to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have
a lovely evening.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's not evening where you are, is it?
It's midnight.
Yeah. Okay.
It's midnight already. But anyway, Erika, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.